Welcome. My name is Kendra Morgan, and I'm the host of the Rise and Build podcast, where we hope to empower you to rise up and build a strong family, knowing you have to strengthen your hands to do the good work. Come with us as we rise and build. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Rise and Build podcast. We're in the aha moments where we abide, hear, and act, and I just get to tell you all the amazing stories of how God shows up and provides for building all children. Today, I'm going to share, honestly, one of my very favorite stories about building all children. So we I'm pretty sure it was our second fundraiser, might have been our third, but I'm pretty confident that it was our second one. And we continue to grow. I was serving, I don't even know, not very many kids at the time, not what we're doing now, but I was serving children. Again, I was just driving to these childcare centers. I had my lime green card table that I would set up, and that is just really how I was serving families. And then I would do all the follow-up at home, and I had really kind of taken over Ryan's office. So he gave me like a corner of his office, and of course, I made it so cute, and we had all kinds of stuff around, and my space kept growing and growing and growing. And it was my second fundraiser. We had a few extra board members, like we were growing. And one of my board members invited Charlie Pennington to my fundraiser. And he was a member of Southern Hills Baptist Church. At the time, he was on their mission committee. And so I knew he was coming. I had never met him before, but I was super excited just that another church was going to hear the story and hear the opportunity to maybe become partners. And so at the event, my board member, which was Dion Kazar, she brought Charlie up to me, and I met him. Older, wiser man, funny, raspy voice. I don't know. We hit it off really quick. And so I met him and then did the event, told my story, and the event was a success. Growing a little bit each year, but it was still pretty small in numbers. And after you do those things, you're exhausted, just because we were the ones doing all the work. So we would set it up, and we would check people in, and I would tell my story, and then I would check people out. And I think we started doing maybe a silent auction then, but we didn't have very many items, just a few. And so anyways, my family and a few of my really close friends that were volunteers were the one doing all of the work. So we were tired. And so the next morning, 9 o'clock, it was early, but not like crazy early. My hair was up in a bun. I was exhausted. My phone rang, and I didn't recognize the number, but something in me told me to answer it. And so I'll never forget, answered the phone, hello, this is Kendra. And on the other side, this man said, Kendra Morgan, Charlie Pennington, do you have plans today? And I was like, no, I don't think so, and he's like, do you remember me? And I said, yeah, I met you last night. And he's like, yep. He's like, meet me today, 1:30 at a park bench. And he gave me an address. And I was like, absolutely. So I immediately hung up with him, and I called Ryan, and I said, hey, can I meet a random man on a park bench at 1:30 today? And he's like, who is it? And I was like, Charlie Pennington. And he's like, yeah, sure, absolutely. So I had no idea what it was about, but he had given me the address, and he said the park bench is in these offices. It's right next door to Southern Hills Baptist Church. And so I said, okay, sure. So I drove to the park bench. So I drove past Southern Hills, and there were these offices. They were like outdoor offices, and there was a park bench. And so I was like, okay, that's where I'm meeting him. So I parked. As I was walking up, he was actually sitting on the bench. And so I said, hi, Charlie, and met him again. And he said, Kendra, I woke up at 3 o'clock, and I knew it was from the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit told me you don't have an office. And I said, oh, yeah, no. I can't afford an office. I said, I work out of my husband's office, and it's working. I had to explain my table and how I go to these childcare centers. And he's like, no. He's like, to do real ministry, you have to have an office. And I said, yeah. I said, I just don't think I can afford an office. And he's like, well, I have 2 offices I want to show you. And I said, okay. So he took me into this office and it had just been remodeled. It was so adorable. Walked through it. I loved it. It was so nice. I mean, it would be a dream for me to even think to have an office like that. And then he took me into another office that had not been painted, had not been remodeled. It was pretty grungy. But the layout, it had 2 rooms. So it had like a room with a wall in between it. And I could see where that could be like an assessment room and a conference room if I could do an observation window. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, I mean, the office that wasn't cute and wasn't painted was really the office that I liked. And so he said, which one do you like? And I said, well, I mean, I like the one that's not painted because I think the layout would be better. And he's like, okay. He's like, well, how much could you pay? And I was like, I mean, I have no idea, but I don't really have any money. And he was like, well, why don't you go talk to your husband and see what you could pay monthly and let me know. He's like, we'll meet back here on this park bench tomorrow. Then let me know. Tomorrow we'll meet here, get a number from Ryan and let me know. And so I was like, okay. I was like, could I take pictures? And he's like, sure. So I went in, I took pictures. So I went home and I showed Ryan this office. And I was like, I see it. Like I see a conference room and I see an assessment room. And then it had a little tiny hallway that I was like, we can make that like a coffee area for our families. And then it had another little tiny office. I was like, and then that could be like where we do the paperwork and the report writing and everything. And Ryan is like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I just don't know. And I said, well, Charlie needs a number of what we could pay in rent. And he said, you mean like what Building All Children could pay in rent? And I said, yes. Okay, so remember, we've had like 2 fundraisers. I have a couple church partners, and I am not taking any salary. Like I'm not taking any money. So we do have a little bit saved up. So Ryan looked at it, and I'll never forget. He wrote this number on this Post-it. And I just looked at him and I was like, I am not giving him that. That is so embarrassing. And I was like, can you add some to it? Like, could you help me pay rent? And he was like, no, Kendra. He's like, you've got to, Building All Children has to do this. So I was like, I asked him again, like, just if you added a little bit to it, it would look better. And he's like, this is what Building All Children can do. Charlie asked you, what can Building All Children do? This is the number. So I was so embarrassed, you guys, to go back and show that number to Charlie. So the next day, I met Charlie at that same bench, and I handed him the Post-it note. And I honestly think I was shaking. And I'll never forget. He opened it, and he goes, huh, and he closed it. And I said, I know that it's not much. I was like, but Ryan said that is what Building All Children could pay. And he said, which office would you want? And I was like, what? And he goes, it's yours. Which office do you want? And I said, okay, but wait, that's just like my monthly payment. Like I can't pay utilities. Like I don't have any money. And he's like, utilities are covered. And I said, so like that if I took the space, I would just pay you that number every month. And he said, yeah. And I was like, okay. And he's like, which office do you want? And I said, well, I really like the one that's not painted because I think it would be the best for the kids and for the families. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. And he's like, okay. And I said, could I paint? And he said, well, we have painters that paint this area. I can get with them and see what they would charge. And I said, well, I don't have any money. Like, could my mom and I paint? And he's like, well, we typically have it professionally done, but yeah, you and your mom could paint. I was like, I promise I'll pick like neutral colors. We're not going to go crazy because the kids can't have crazy paint. I was like, do I need to run the colors past you? And he's like, just go simple colors. You can do whatever you want. And I was like, okay. And I said, I don't have anything. And he goes, what do you mean? I was like, I don't have a chair. Like I have a lime green table in my car. Like I don't have any supplies or anything. And so I want you to know that it's going to look empty for a while until I can gather some stuff up. And he smiled so big and he said, I just have a feeling the Lord will provide. So my mom came up And we started painting this office that I just had such a vision with. And the door, I would hear a knock on the door. And so I'd put my paintbrush down and I would go answer the door. And this lady was standing there and she said, "Hi, my name," I don't know. I don't remember her name. And Charlie told me that you needed some chairs. And here were 2 chairs. And then the door would knock. And I would answer it. And this lady was like, "Hi, Charlie told me that you might need a chair. I have this extra chair. Would you use it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll take it." Well, what was so cool is 2 totally different ladies. Those chairs were the same pattern. They matched. So in the front room, we had 2 matching chairs that came from 2 totally different people. And then I just started having people knock on the door and give me kids supplies. It was unbelievable, you guys. And so then I had a good friend that worked for a local school district here in town, and she told me that they had a warehouse of stuff that they just kind of get rid of. She's like, "Would you be willing to go look and see what they have?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, how do I even get in there?" And so through the right connections, Ryan and I went, and they had old file cabinets, and we dug deep, but I found a couple old children tables, and we just started really getting stuff donated and furniture donated, and my mom and I painted, and anyways, we ended up having our first office, and it was 55th and Lewis. And it was such a blessing in so many ways. And I'll never forget, Charlie said, "You have to have a place to do ministry." And that place did the greatest ministry. We helped so many people in that office. And we had the families walk through the door that were broken, that needed help. We did biblical counseling. We did assessments. I did family conferences. We had moms and mentors. We had a mom's program that we created where we would drink coffee and read the Bible. And I could have never started Building All Children without that office and without Charlie Pennington. And I will forever be grateful. He is still a supporter. Him and his wife come to all my fundraisers and they donate to Building All Children. I have called him, I don't know how countless times, to get a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of advice. Great businessman, great strong believer. And I am so thankful for the people that the Lord has put in my world.